Shalom and welcome to this virtual tour, Jerusalem through the eyes of Hebrew University, guided by our esteemed tour guide, Dr. Itay Gat. Last month, we toured Mount Scopus, and today we are visiting the Edmond J. Safra Givat Ram campus and its surrounding area. Before we begin, let me tell you about our guide. Itay graduated from the esteemed Israeli military Talpiot program, which is located at the heart of the Hebrew University at the Edmond Safra Campus, where we are visiting today. For those of you who are not familiar with Talpiot, Talpiot program is an elite Israeli Defense Forces training program for recruits who have demonstrated outstanding academic ability in the sciences. Graduates pursue double higher education while they serve in the Army, and they use their expertise to further IDF research and development in technological leadership positions. After completing his service in the IDF Research and Development Corps, Itay received his PhD from the Institute of Computer Sciences at the Hebrew University, focusing on brain sciences. In 2003, he joined Mobileye. Throughout the following 15 years, Itay was privileged to work towards making the advanced driving assistance systems an everyday reality, and eventually he became senior vice president of that company. In March of 2017, Intel purchased Mobileye for the sum of $15.3 billion US. This was and still is the largest acquisition of an Israeli company to date. Since his early years, Itay cherished another passion, the love for the land of Israel, its scenery, archaeology, wildlife, and unique history. In 2018, with a feeling of accomplishment regarding his role in advancing road safety, he felt he could now embark on a new career as a full-time tour guide. In this capacity, he can now fulfill his passion and direct his energy towards conveying his love of the land of Israel. Itay is married with 3 children. He's a dedicated triathlete and volunteers in several nonprofit organizations. Now, like in a real tour, if you happen to have a question, please type it in the Q&A box and Itay will look out for your questions. Itay, we are ready to start the tour.
Okay, thank you. So let's start with the magnificent view that you can see upon entering the Safra Campus, the place that we are going to talk about today. So thank you for the introduction, and as it was quite evident, I'm really excited to be here today with you, as this is the place that I spent many years, and as I will describe to you later, I have various connection to this place. I'm feeling that I've been privileged to enjoy this magnificent place, and I'd like to share that with you. And as said, please feel free to ask me whatever you want while I'm talking. So, as we did last time, I suggest that we'll start with a familiar position way up above in the air and take the way that Google Earth allows us to fly to Israel. And this time, I'd like to take you to basically the ending point of the Mount Scopus campus, or the temporary ending point, and that is when the State of Israel was formed, and unfortunately Mount Scopus has to be evacuated from the university. So what you'll be seeing shortly upon descending towards Israel, after doing all the journey from Canada, is the map of Israel as it was in 1949. And I'd like to highlight that you're able to see here the border between Israel and Jordan at the time. And the fact that Jerusalem was at the end of sort of a corridor, a narrow corridor, and Jerusalem was just at the end of it. And the sand going downwards, I'll remove the general map and just stay with the Jerusalem area map. You see the city, here you see the end of the corridor. Let me highlight that a bit for you here, so you can see my pointer a bit easier. So you can see that there was the end of this corridor, the border between Israel and Jordan. And you see here that Mount Scopus, where the university was, and actually also the Hadassah Medical School, we'll talk about it also next time, remained as an exclave within the Jordan. And once every 2 weeks, there was a convoy going from Israel, from Jerusalem, from the western part to Mount Scopus, bringing food supplies to the mountain, to the people staying there, and actually taking back with them some of the possessions that were left at the university. And I'm specifically addressing the books that remained at Israel National Library that was in Mount Scopus. And here you see the United Nations officers packing books, properly writing them down, what have they got, and taking them down with them towards the new city. And now it's time to continue the story. Basically, what I've said so far is repetition from what I've been telling you about the start of the university at Mount Scopus. And now it's time to describe how the university addressed the fact that Jerusalem was separated, was divided, and there was a need to find a new place for the university. And this is what you see now as markers in the city, because the university sort of split between several buildings around town. So you see here several markers. I will not address them all, but concentrate mostly on this place here called Terra Santa, which was where the management of university moved to, and also where the National Library was formed. And in order to be able to see that properly, let's go downward to the city of Jerusalem and have a look where it is. So we started here at the university today, but I would like to take you now towards the Terra Santa. In a second, we will be there. Just a sec. Here. Takes a bit of time flying in the air. In a short while, you see the building from up in the air. And this is Terra Santa, a college built at the 1920s for Italian group to be used as a school to both Muslim, Christian, and Jewish students. And as in 1949, it was almost empty from the student. The State of Israel hired that place from the church and made this interesting place the headquarters of the university. Let's have a look at this site from ground level. Here you see the building from the street level. You can see the Madonna coming from Florence that was put here on the neoclassical building built by the Jerusalemite architect Antonio Barluzzi. And this is the building that serves as main headquarters for the university in those years. And it would not be surprising that there were many stories about this building, and the most noticeable of them was actually being put in a book by the famous Israeli writer Amos Oz, one of the first books that gave him the fame, called My Michael, where the heroine of the book, Hannah, has slipped at the staircase here at the building, and her husband to be Michael caught her and helped her, and that was the start of the romance. The book itself is more complex than just a happy romance, but still, this was one of the events that happened here at university, and this is actually based on a true story where two professors have met here at the Terra Santa building. So yeah, moving outside of Mount Scopus was not a happy move for the student, but still they were able to survive the living in a divided city, and where the university was spread all over town. And I'd like to show you yet another interesting building of that sort, and I'm taking you downward a few streets ahead, where you will be able to see the building. Wait, it's here. The small building that you should be able to see shortly has started as the Thomas Cook office in Israel at the late 19th century. And at the time, there were not all these tall buildings around him. That was the only building standing here at the neighborhood of Mamilla, not far away from the border. And this was the cafeteria of the students. And in a similar manner, I can say that my parents-in-law have met in this building as well. So, by the way, we've been using the tool, even last time, the simplex tool that enabled me just to fly up in the air and show you Jerusalem with all of its beauty. Another high-tech Israeli company is responsible for that tool, and I would like to make extensive use of that also in the talk today. So I think that sort of gives the notion of the move of the university, again, to show you the map, a university that instead of being at one campus that served all, was spread now all over town, and that pushed the government of Israel at the early 50s to come to a decision that was to create a new area that would be the national quarter or the national precinct of Israel. And that area would include both governmental, cultural, and educational center. And that area is where I'm currently pointing. This area here, that is where the supposed to be Safra Campus will be built. And let me show you the outcome these days of that governmental decision, meaning what did this campus or what did this area, governmental area, came to be. And I'm, just a sec, making my way there. Here it is. Oops. Yeah. So if you look at this area today, you will be able to see many important, interesting buildings. Just a sec. Oh, sorry, I brought you to the wrong place. Here it is. So today, you will be able to see in this area the House of Parliament, the Knesset, the place that I'm currently looking at, situated at the top of the hill with an avenue going from the Knesset towards the Supreme Court that you see on the other side. And if we turn our view to the other direction, we will be able to see also, I was talking about also cultural elements, and that would be here, the area of the Israeli Museum. And you can clearly see the shrine of the book here that holds the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I think that having looked at this hill, you can understand why many would actually call this place the Capitol Hill of Israel, because it just includes everything in terms of government, culture, and education. And that is the time to focus our view on the Safra Campus that you see just underneath me at the moment. And I think that the first thing that you're able to see here is the fact that the same avenue, or the same avenue design that lead from the House of Parliament to the Supreme Court could be found within the Safra Campus of the Hebrew University. And this was indeed the design to provide sort of the tranquility of green meadows here on the land, and to build the university around that. And building the new campus of the university, this is when I would like to move to the second part of my talk. So far, I gave you the background of building the university, of moving to this campus. Now, let's have a look at the campus itself. And let's start with making room for the campus, because you should remember that prior to building the Safra Campus, this was a hill, all covered with the local Jerusalem stone, the limestone. The hill, by the way, where the House of Parliament and Government House and Supreme Court and the museum, as well as the campus, all of that is called Hill of Ram, where Ram is the Hebrew acronym for Officers' Assembly, because in Israel Independence War, this was sort of a camp where officers stayed. But now let's have a look about what it looked like in the early days. And this is what you see here in the picture, a Jewish worker carving stones with his hammer and chisel. And I hope you're able to see the hammer, because the movement was sort of kept here at the image as a smear of the hammer. But you can see here the stones that were taken from that Hill of Ram, the hill that the Safra Campus would be later in. And you can see already here the sign of the university, the Hebrew University sign on top of the flag. And I can tell you that some of the stones were grind to make gravel that was used to build the university, and some were actually integrated into houses and walls in the university. Mostly the stones that remained in sort of the gross and mostly uncarved format. And let's just go down now to the entrance of the university, where you will be able to see some of these. And I'm taking you now to the entrance of the university, where you were able to see from up top. This is the bus station. And if you're asking why is it so important to look at a bus station, I would like to draw your attention first to the fact that here you're able to see the local stones. These are the stones that were carved here at the campus before they made the main avenue and carved the hills so that it would be the place that people can come and study. That is one thing. But the university, and this is what we're going to see shortly, was built not just an educational place, but also almost as a museum for architecture. And one of the symbols of that you can see here on the concrete roof that was placed on top of the bus station, that if you look carefully, you will see that it's not an ordinary concrete roof, but it's actually a cycloid, meaning the figure that you now see on the screen that is created by rolling a point on a circle. So that is the figure that you see here, the cycloid on the concrete roof. And another important point that one is able to see is what you see here on the other side of the bus station. And this is a sculpture made by an Israeli sculptor called Danziger. And that sculpture, let's have a somewhat closer look at it. We can see, for example, the scarab that were popular amulets and impression seal in ancient Egypt and found in many places in where there were archaeological excavation in Israel. But more important, what you see here are elements that were found in Chatzor, a site that was excavated just where the Hebrew University was built here at the Safra Campus. And this is remnants of a Canaanite temple. So I think that you can start to see what the designer and planner of the university tried to make here, the combination of new and interesting building techniques and ideas together with the old that all should be part of the university. I'd like to continue that line of thought and take you now inside the university to what happens just behind this wall. Hold tight, we're going to jump over the wall. Here is the wall that we've just seen. That's the concrete roof that I've just talked about. And looking at the other side, you see the dome here. That is the dome of the planetarium that was built here to allow students to study astronomy and have a lot of experience with that. Now, the interesting story that has to do with this site is that this site was working for many years, and at some point they decided to tear it apart, and this is the process that is ongoing now as the building should be renewed and changed. But in that process, in 2004, at the lower level of that building, one of the professors came up with a telescope. And he started checking, it was rather an old one, and he started checking where this telescope has come from, and was able to do that because there was an inscription on that telescope who made that. The name of the person was Tzvi Gezari. And from the inscription, it was possible to tell that this was made in Princeton, New Jersey. And that turned out a few lights in the head of that professor. And he continued checking that and came up with the following story. And before telling you the story, let's have a look at the telescope that is still standing today at the Hebrew University. I will later show you where. That telescope, and here you can roughly see part of the inscription. So it turns out that that telescope was indeed made by Tzvi Gezari, who was born in Poland, moved to Israel at the 1930s, learned here engineering, and later moved to New Jersey, as said, and opened his own business making pipes, and was, as a hobby, he was building telescopes. One day at the convention in 1953, he met no other but Albert Einstein, that you see here. And upon talking to them and telling what everybody is interested in, Albert Einstein told Tzvi that he's actually rather jealous of him because he is a handyman and can build his own telescope, while Einstein never had a chance of looking in a real telescope. He said, yes, of course, I've been to many places, but actually didn't have a chance. And when Tzvi Gezari asked him, well, why didn't you ask to get one for yourself? Einstein replied that he was actually offered several times, but it was always, there was sort of a price attached that he should embrace the company making the telescope for him. So Tzvi had a wonderful idea. He said, okay, I'll make a telescope for you for free. but why don't you, instead of embracing me as a telescope maker, say that you will donate that telescope in your will to the Hebrew University? And this is exactly how it was. On May 14th, 1954, at the 6th anniversary of the State of Israel, Tzvi Gazari took two of his sons and they drove to New Jersey to Mercer Street where Albert Einstein lived. And the picture that you see here was taken on that day where first Einstein had the option of using the telescope. And here you see both of them talking about the new telescope. His sons also later told an interesting story that that telescope was made actually of two parts. The first is the main tube that you see here, and the second one is the tripod that you see underneath. And it turns out that the screws that were used for the telescope were built using the American imperial measurements in inches, whereas the screws that were used for the tripod were made in metric system. And when asked why was that so, it turns out that the pipe was taken from his factory in the US, whereas the tripod was made from German Second World War Canon parts that were moved to the US at the time. So the discussion was concluded that this is really an implementation of what the prophet Isaiah said, that they would beat their sword into plowshares. And with that thought in mind, I would like to take you to another building in the university. So we moved from the entrance, the bus station here. You've seen the planetarium, and now let's move to the National Library of Israel, which is over here, just a sec, here at the university. I'm just going down to it. And again, let's have a closer look at the third place that hosted Israel National Library after Mount Scopus and Terra Santa. And just a sec, this is the building from downward. I'll say a few words about it later, but first let me take you inside and connect the idea that I was talking about the prophet Isaiah with a work of art that is actually seen within the National Library. And this was done when it was opened by the famous Israel artist Mordechai Ardon. And what you see here are stained glass windows or showing the eternal words from Isaiah. And let me now read that to you, that it said that many people shall go and say, come ye and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his path. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the law from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up swords against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. And what you see here, and let me go into some details, are the ways that Mordechai Ardon, the artist, have seen these words from Prophet Isaiah that I just described. So the first part is on the left part of the stained glass, where you see all the roads to Jerusalem. And because all the people of the world are walking in the prophecy towards Jerusalem, you see that's written in many languages. I will go with you with the one that I can read, which is the English one, that you can see that it says that go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. That continues here, and you see that in also various other languages such as Greek and Arabic, etc. The middle part that you see now shows the city of Jerusalem, where these eternal words are being said on it. And again, let me show you a few parts of it. You see here the walls of Jerusalem, and if you look carefully, you can see that these walls are not made of stones, but they actually made of the scrolls of the Dead Sea, the one that reside not so far from here on the shrine of the book. And part of these scrolls are being enlarged here, and this is the part that said that people would beat their swords into plowshares and said before. And the last part is actually showing that in the image, where up in the air you see the plowshares, and downward you see warfare. You see not just swords, but also missiles, and part of tanks and part of aircraft, all being demolished to be made into plowshares. So this is the kind of art that you see today at the National Library. The National Library, by the way, was dedicated to the name of Lady Davis, as you can probably see here, from Montreal, Canada. She was a famous philanthropist that contributed a lot to education in Israel, and therefore it was quite an honor that the National Library was called after her. And let me take you now to the next building in the university that would continue this line of thought that we were talking about, because that building is named after Albert Einstein. And this, as you can see here, the Einstein Institute of Mathematics. And this building also shows us that the campus, the Safra Campus, was built using many architectural styles of that period. I mean, the previous building was mostly characterized to be the international style of that period, whereas this building, made of the rough stone that were just carved here on Safra Campus, as I've shown you before, this building is thought of in the local Jerusalemite style that you can see in many of the new neighborhoods of Jerusalem, Rehavia, Beit HaKerem, and others such like. And if you go wandering in the corridors of this institute, you may come up with figures like Professor Uman or Professor Elon Lindenstrauss, that I would like to show you that you are able to see also in our last talk, because both of them were awarded with high prizes. This is Professor Uman, a mathematician and economist that was awarded the Nobel Prize. And this is Professor Elon Lindenstrauss, again, mathematician, that were awarded the Fields Medal. That's the high prize for mathematician. Other people would be Michael Rubin that you see here, etc. And this is, by the way, the sort of what we call the Nobelist wall at Mount Scopus, to connect you to Mount Scopus, where we today commemorate or remind us all of the people who won Nobel Prize. And of course, in the middle, you see the figure of Albert Einstein. And I'd like to continue this sort of architectural tour by going to this following building. This was the synagogue that was built within the Hebrew University. There were actually debates at the beginning whether a synagogue is required within a secular institute. but the decision was, given that it's the Hebrew University, this is quite appropriate. And if you're looking at the design of that building, maybe you're able to remind yourself with the structure that I've seen you at the entrance, meaning the bus station, and to remind you, let's have a look at the cycloid to see that this is exactly what we see here. The formation that is being created when you roll a point on top of a circle, this is exactly what was in the mind of the architect. His name, by the way, was Heinz Rau, who designed that building. And interesting enough, there was an article about this synagogue in 1957 at the Time magazine, where they were talking about the new campus that was being built in Jerusalem. And they were wondering how an atheist, because Heinz Rau was a self-proclaimed atheist, how he was able to build a synagogue. And his answer, and I'm quoting from that article, is that what is needed in a house of prayer is harmonious proportion and serene atmosphere. Whether an architect succeeds in creating these is a measure of the architect's professional capabilities and not of his religious belief. After all, there isn't much difference in atmosphere between St. Mark's in Venice and a synagogue. So this was the line of thought underlying the building of the synagogue, and let me take you a little bit inside. Here you standing below the dome and enjoying the magnificent view of the campus, the green part of the campus that you can see from these cycloids. And you can see also the part that is mostly open today to the public, which is the part where they host holy books that people can come and read and study. And actually, this synagogue today is mostly used for reading from the Bible and discussing various ideas rather than a praying place. So actually, maybe more connected to the ideas of Heinz Rau, where he built that synagogue in the middle of the university. And having said that, I'd like to connect you from here, because you see here in the Hebrew University, there are many connections to whatever is going in Jerusalem. So the next connection that I'll try to make is to the first synagogue ever found in Jerusalem. And unfortunately, we cannot see that synagogue anymore, but what we can see today at the Israel Museum, and this is what you see here above, we can see the inscription that was found in that synagogue. This synagogue was built at the old city of Jerusalem, specifically at the part which is called today the city of David. And what you see written here is that more than 2,000 years ago, at the time where the Second Temple was standing on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, there was already a synagogue, and that synagogue was used to reading from the Bible, discussing it, understanding the meaning of the Holy Scriptures, and to be able to host people near who are coming to Jerusalem. With that thought in mind, let me take you again up in the air and show you where that synagogue is. And here it is. I'm now pointing at that dome and tell you that in that synagogue, as I showed you before, that's the place where people are reading from the Bible and discussing it today. And all around the place where I'm currently pointing are the dormitories of the Hebrew University. So I think that it is kind of matching with what the first synagogue ever found in Jerusalem and ever in the world was trying to do, to tell us how to read in the Bible and to come and stay nearby so we can go to the important place on top of the hill. And with that line of thought, I'd like to conclude the part of describing some of the first buildings that were built in the Hebrew University and actually move a little bit forward in time to the futuristic view of the university. And of course, when we're talking about future of the university, we are talking about the next generation. And where I'm taking you now, this part of the university hosts the authority of the community and youth. That's the place for gifted kids. And here, there is a center where those kids can come and see the university, being exposed to workshop, lectures, and discussion involving the university experts in many fields. And I promised at the beginning that I have more connection to the university than studying here. And the next connection that I have is that what you see here underneath, just opposite the Safra Campus, is one of the most prestigious high school in Jerusalem. It's the Hebrew University High School. It's commonly known as the Hebrew word Leyada, where Leyada literally means next to in Hebrew. So that school is being famous as being, that's the school actually. That school is famous for being next to the Hebrew University. This is where two of my kids have studied, and they were able to witness firsthand the kind of programs that connected them to the Hebrew University. So they came to the labs here, they came to use the sporting facilities of the university, enjoyed the grounds here, and also from time to time walk to the cafeteria. And if you look on another part of the university, you see that interesting looking building here that if you look closely, you see that it's sort of an upside down pyramid here. Today, it is another school that is connected with the university. That's the Academy for Dance and Music. But when I came to the Hebrew University, that was the place where the Talpiot program that Dina mentioned at the beginning was hosted. This is where the place where the army used to bring talented young people that would study at the Hebrew University so that later they could become officers in the army to lead various R&D research. That is also where Professor Lindenstrauss, whom I showed you before, studied a few years behind me. He was also a member of Talpiot. And I wanted to share a story about this building because when I first studied here, and I was looking at the basement of that building, way here below, I came across a hidden room that was closed a few years before I came there. And upon searching for the key, I found out that this was a dark room of a photography lab. So I reopened the place and made it active again. And it was functioning for a few years, and it was quite helpful for people to study another thing. And years after that, when I read about Harry Potter, Chamber of Secret, I felt that this was just written about me. Another thing that I want to mention that is happening within the premises of the Hebrew University, again, contributing to the future of the university and Israel high-tech environment, is the Asper Huji Innovative. It was founded on the tenets of celebrated Canadian entrepreneur Israel Asper, and the participants of that program that take place all over the university enjoy hands-on courses and workshops that help them identify their unique capabilities and creativity, and ultimately train them as innovators and entrepreneurs as they transition their ideas from the university part to Israel high-tech industry. And having said that, I'd like to take you now within the university to the fastest growing academic unit that have almost doubled its intake of new students over the last 7 years and still going on. This is the Computer Science and Engineering School. And this, I'd like to show you that 3 buildings from ground level. And this is what you're able to see now. That's the School of Engineering, the Rachel and Salim Benin School of Computer Science. And talking about architecture, we see that this is being made from the modern type of building that we see today in Israel, sort of a lot of glass and fine stone, and already enriched the campus in terms of being also a museum in terms of architecture. But I'd like also to point your view down here, where I hope you are able to see that this is Mobileye building. This was contributed by the name of the company that I had the privilege of working for 15 years. And this has a lot to do for the fact that Professor Amnon Shashua, who founded Mobileye, is a professor here at the School of Computer Science and Engineering that has a lot to do with supporting Israel high-tech industry. Moving again up in the air, I'd like to take you to another fascinating building on the other side of the campus, which is what you see here. In a second, that would be clearer. And if you're wondering what is this kind of structure or image that you see here on the side of the building, I will tell you that this is the Edmond and Lilly Safra Center for Brain Research. Therefore, what you see here, and let me take you again downwards so you will be able to see it in a clearer way. This is an image of the brain. More specifically, the part of the brain that is responsible for visual understanding. Yes, the kind of cells, the nerve cells, the neurons, axons, etc., that you see here were taken from real images of the brain, carefully copied here, so the people who study can actually see what they're studying in the sense of this aluminum structure is real nerve cells that are portrayed here. And to show you again the type of building that you see here, let me take you inside, and you see how green and lovely that building is with the open roof that let the sun inside, so there's very little need for lighting the place. This center was made in order to allow one of the most important studies of our era, the study of the amazing capability of the human brain. And the way that the university is doing that is by combining experts from physics, psychology, computer science, physiology, and many more to work together in order to push forward our understanding and information about the brain. And there were various breakthroughs that were made here by researchers of this building. And again, my connection to the place is that my PhD was exactly in that field. I was part of that center before it moved to this building, and I was doing a research that tried to model brain activity using computer science theory, and came up with rather interesting thoughts about that later generation also continued. The next building that I'm going to take you also deals with a fascinating experience. And in order to do that, we have to retrace our steps and go back near the computer science building and look at this part of the hill that I'm currently pointing at. And actually, this next building is a futuristic one that you are not able to see here on the ground. Therefore, the only way would be to have a look at an image of it. And this is what you see here. The same hill that you're now looking at would host in the few years the NEQST, meaning the nanoscale quantum science and technology building that you see here. This research center would allow the researchers to concentrate on quantum theory. Well, quantum theory was made possible by the discoveries of Albert Einstein more than 100 years ago. And even though today we see that as a very complex theory, it's underlying every aspect of our lives. Because, for example, the media that you and I are using now in order to see this presentation is based on integrated circuits in your computer, whose idea could not have been materialized if we would have not understood quantum mechanics. And in this building, people are going to push our understanding of that theory, both in the theoretical level and also in the practical level. There are people who are today working in the Hebrew University on working on quantum computation ideas and quantum encryption, to mention just two of these, and all of that is going to be part of that building that you see here. And the last thing that I'm going to show you within the university, again, I apologize for the need to, again, to move to the other part of the university. And this area here, where underneath the brain center, where you see that a lot of works are being carried at the moment, see that this area is being worked at. You see also the heavy machinery that is working at, because this is how this area is going to look like in a few years. This is the new high-tech park that is being built now at the outskirts of the campus, of the Safra Campus. And just to give you one figure, we believe that it's going to host more than 10,000 people working, part of the university and part of a new Israel high-tech companies that are tightly connected with the university, with the Safra Campus, because of the high technology that is being addressed here. And the last place that I'm going to take you, just to conclude our view, is the location of the newly built National Library. The National Library would soon move to a place that is outside of the campus, just between the Hebrew University and the parliament. So the Knesset, the House of Parliament of Israel, is where I'm currently pointing. And just underneath that, you're able to see this building that is now in construction. And this is going to host the new National Library of Israel. And again, let me show you a picture of how this is going to look like in a few years. That's the view that you will be able to see from the Safra Campus, looking towards the east, towards the House of Parliament, and you will see the new National Library. So I'd like to summarize our tour for today in saying that the Safra Campus started as a replacement from the previous campus that was an exclave in Jordan. we viewed its fascinating architectural style that made him not just a vivid campus, but also a museum for various architectural ideas. And we may mention the tight connection between the universities and one of the first members of the Board of Governors, Albert Einstein. And if to borrow a statement from a previous Israel president, Shimon Peres, I would like to say that the Safra Campus is made out of the future. Having said that, I would like to conclude our tour for today. If anybody have a question, I'd be glad to take them now.
Yes, Itay, this is Dina here. We received quite a few questions on email, but I think that I will choose one, and with that we'll conclude. And the question that Rose wants to ask is, do you find that higher degrees, university higher degrees, actually help you when moving to research and development in high tech?
Yeah, I would like to state that very clearly, that higher education is mandatory, because it's not enough to just be able to know how to program things or to be an entrepreneur if you do not have a thorough scientific background in your packback. And as I think Mobileye shows, it was founded based on many theoretical ideas that could have emerged only at a university, at a place that you had the time to look into some ideas that at first may seem non-practical, but at the end of the day, if you make good use of them, they would deliver the next leap in technology. So I would say that with all my heart, and that's my great belief, that this campus and the people studying it had a major contribute to Israel being a startup nation.
And you're a proof of it, indeed. So Itay, thank you so much. I'm very familiar with that campus, and I must say that I've learned quite a few historical facts about it. So that was wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. And please check out our plans for the future to join one of our trips to Israel and meet Dr. Itay Gat in person. In the meantime, I want to thank you all and have a pleasant rest of the day.